Have you ever wondered why the hell are these cars so fast? Well, these cars are the cars that are raced in Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport, the billionaire racing club, as they call it. This is the most famous racing series globally, spanning 21 different countries, shaking cities with sheer excitement and incredibly loud, roaring engines. It all started way back in the 1950s. I know what you're thinking. How the hell were those old cars even able to race? Well, instead of looking like this crappy thing, they look like this. These beautiful race cars raced in at the first ever F1 race at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone on May 13th, won by Giuseppe Farina. He won 3 out of the 7 races, which landed him first in the Drivers' Championship, and behind, with a close second, was the El Maestro, the great Juan Manuel Fangio. The El Maestro, or the teacher in Spanish, was deemed this nickname for his impact and dominance through the 1950s era of Formula One, and also for teaching the other drivers a lesson. Fangio won 5 championships in the 1950s. That's half a decade of winning constantly. And then he retired in 1958 at the French Grand Prix. Then came the 1960s with new mid-engine regulations that saw a significant improvement with handling and performance. They also introduced the monocoque chassis that enhances the car's structural integrity and safety. It's actually still used today in the new cars with a carbon fiber monocoque. The 60s had 3 legendary drivers: Jack Brabham, the Aussie who won 3 world titles in the years 1959, 1960, and 1966. Also, a co-founder in Brabham Racing that was later sold. Next is Jim Clark and Graham Hill, Mr. Monaco as they call them. In the 60s, this is when we saw modifications to the outside of the actual cars with spoilers. However, some teams were opposed to it, like Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari, the owner of Ferrari, said, "Aerodynamics is for people who can't build engines." Next up, the 70s, the dangerous era. It was a transformative decade in Formula One, with its very important technological advancements and innovations, with dramatic races and new F1 stars. Some of the tech innovations were aerodynamics. This isn't when it was introduced, but it really took off in the 70s. We also saw the installation of ground effect cars. It created a downforce underneath the cars without any significant drag. The 2 Lotuses in 78 and 79 were dominant due to this. Ground effect cars were removed in the later years, but now the most recent up-to-date cars uses ground effect. The final innovation was the turbocharged engines. This innovation would really set up the car for the 1980s. In my opinion, there were 3 very famous Formula One drivers in the 70s: Niki Lauda, James Hunt, and Jackie Stewart. Lauda and Hunt had a very impactful rivalry that was showcased very well in the movie Rush. This is also when F1 introduced more safety improvements, with Jack Stewart advocating it. There was unfortunately 12 drivers' deaths in the 70s, so F1's governing body had to do something about it. They also introduced the Canadian Grand Prix, which is happening this Sunday, June 9th, in Montreal. Lastly, something that was impactful in the 70s was sponsorships and commercializations, and I think F1 would be the same without them. 1980s. Ah, the time of arcades, going to the movies, and riding bikes with friends. In F1, we saw some world-class driver in the 80s who are deemed some of the greatest of all time. These are the years that the turbo was very dominant, and the McLaren F1 team did a very good job building their car with these. In the 1988 season, the two McLaren drivers won 15 out of 16 races. They also introduced active suspension, which I've talked a whole lot about. Some famous drivers are Alain Prost, also known as the Professor, Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell. Wow, look at that mustache. And the all great Ayrton Senna. Senna's my personal favorite Formula One driver. I just loved how he drove the car with skill, fierce determination until his untimely death in 1994. One of the notable races in the 80s was the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix when Senna was driving for the Team Tolman in his younger years. It was a rain-soaked race that many drivers were failing to succeed, but Senna proved his skill in the race and the rain and won that race incredibly. However, this was controversial due to its ending with Senna rival Prost. They had a team rivalry that we've never seen before. 1990s. The 90s were a more pivotal decade for F1 for its quick tech advancements and new drivers. The FIA introduced traction control, which would help the drivers significantly. However, it was banned to focus on the driver's skill. An innovation that is crucial to it today is telemetry, so teams could receive real-time data in their cars to improve strategy and performance. The 90s was when carbon fiber really took off. It became a standard in all the cars due to its strength and lightness that would enhance the safety of cars. A driver that is known worldwide that came up was Michael Schumacher. Emerged in his earlier years in the 90s, then eventually winning the championship in 1994 and 1995. After Senna's death in 94, the FIA took numerous safety measures with new track layouts, improved crash barriers, and a stricter car construction. Most notably out of these was the HANDS device, a head and neck support that would save drivers from neck and head injuries. The 90s was another decade of improving stepping stones that are now mandatory in today's age of Formula One. 2000s. In the new millennium, the earlier years of the 2000s really belonged to Michael Schumacher and his Ferrari, winning consecutively from 2000 to 2004 until it was stopped by Fernando Alonso and his Renault in 2005 and 2006. Alonso is still active in today's grid, being the oldest driver, 42. Renault really fell from grace since their glory years in '05 and '06. Now, they are in the lower field, fighting for only a measly point. In 2007, Ferrari won another championship, but with a different driver, Kimi Räikkönen, who is loved globally for basically not giving up. You get the point. Narrowly missing out in the championship in '07 was Lewis Hamilton in a McLaren. That was also his first year in Formula One, and he only lost by a couple points. And then Spygate, which I'll talk about. But don't worry, the next season in '08, he won. And then 6 times after that, the FIA introduced more engine regulations with the introduction of V10 engines, and then switch to V8 engines in 2006. And by reducing the speeds of car and improving safety, then came the hybrid tech, which was the start of hybrid power in Formula One. Also, improved safety features and medical facilities. Mainly, a lot of regulation changes are aimed at improving competition, reducing the cost, and enhancing safety. A popular controversy in 2007 was when the McLaren F1 team that Lewis Hamilton drove for was fined $100 million and disqualified from the championship for possessing confidential Ferrari documents illegally. Some new teams also arose in Formula One, like BMW, Toyota, Honda, and Red Bull, who is now dominating the 2020s. The 2000s are a decade of multiple team dominance, innovation, and changed Formula One, setting the stage for the modern era of the sport. 2010s, when everyone in the world thought the world was going to end in 2012. This was the beginning of dominance from Red Bull, with Sebastian Vettel winning consecutively from 2010 to 2013, with thanks to Adrian Newey and his engineering brilliance. In 2014, a new team called Mercedes made an unprecedented dominance due to the introduction of the hybrid era. They won the Constructors' Championship and Drivers' Championship from 2014 all the way to 2020, with Lewis Hamilton winning 5 out of the 6 championships. The other drivers was Nico Rosberg, who won in 2016 and then retired after his championship. The 2016 season had a fierce team rivalry at Mercedes, with the old two best friends growing up, joining F1, and then they began to hate each other. F1 introduced some groundbreaking safety measures. That was the Halo. This was a cockpit protective device that protects the driver's head, initially hated, but has proven itself countless times by saving drivers' lives in multiple different incidents. Liberty Media acquired Formula One in 2017, bringing a fresh approach to the sport's commercial and media strategy, focusing on a fan experience and a digital engagement. They also expanded the calendar with new races that expanded F1's global footprint. A tragic moment that was the last ever Formula One driver death was Jules Bianchi's, who suffered a fatal injury to his head in 2014. His passing led to the introduction of the Halo that I just talked about. Some new stars include Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, Lando Norris in the McLaren, and Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, who ended the Mercedes dominance in 2020. The 2020s. This is the most recent decade. With the end of one dominance, the start of one begins. Red Bull ended Mercedes' dominance. Now, in the past 2 years, Red Bull has been one of the most dominant constructors ever. In the 2020 season in Abu Dhabi, it was very close race, dramatic and controversial, with Hamilton in his Mercedes and Max in his Red Bull. The race director had a decision that led to Max winning the championship. Now, in the past 2 years, Red Bull has been one of, if not the most dominant constructor ever, winning 22 out of 23 races last year and championship won by Max Verstappen. This ending of dominance is soon to come with McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull racing very close together currently. In 2021, they implemented a budget cap to level the playing field and ensure financial sustainability. F1 also got a significant impact by the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to a revised calendar, strict health protocols. Despite all this, the season was completely successful. They also launched We Race as One initiative to address the issues of diversity, inclusion, and sustainability within the sport. This decade is yet to be done, only 4 years in, and it's crazy with major teams, switches, and new laws. I, myself, can't wait to see how it turns out. Yeah, that's pretty much it for all the years in F1. There was a lot to cover, but I think I got the best of it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed.